A lot of glare kicking up the top of my head.
No, I can see you good.
All right, believe it. Yeah. Good.
Perfect. All right, cool, man. Yeah, dude, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Man, pleasure having me, man.
Yep.
Yeah, 2021. Hopefully a better year than this last.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, man, how you been? You been I know you've been training, you've been working and all that.
Yeah, no, life's been yeah. It's just like you said, man. Training and working, right? I've
Yeah.
been fortunate that I've been getting to the gyms early in the morning, typically before I go to work. Triforce and a couple of other gyms I train on nights and weekends, but 4-1 boxing, man. I'm in there 4 days a week, minimal. I'm getting strength and conditioning, working my pad work, getting my hands, just staying active.
Yeah.
And it was things that helped me. When the fight came for Dana White for the Contender Series, I was in some decent shape. So
Yeah, man, how did that come about? That's pretty big news for you. I know you were supposed to fight back in April, but then obviously when everything happened, that got canceled and then so how did that all go down with the Contender Series?
yeah, so ultimately, my manager Tyson Chaudier, he is owner and operator of Top Game Management, and he's got a couple of guys in the organization that work with him. But he's the manager of Calvin Cater and Rob Font and Mike Rodriguez, and a bunch of other top line fighters from between the UFC, Bellator, PFL, and a bunch of other guys in and out of the big leagues. As far as how it came up, man, ultimately what it came down to is when one of my teammates won, I reached out and just kind of let him know that I was staying active in the gym. COVID was canceling a lot of fights short notice, and the UFC was scooping up a lot of regional guys on short notice because everybody falling out, due to COVID. Uh, so when these things kind of started taking place, ultimately he kind of just reached out. Well, we touched base, and I let him know that I was staying in the gym. And he was like, "Well, it's real crazy time. Stay fit, stay active, and we'll try to fit you somewhere that opens up. Just stay busy." Didn't think really much of it, but it was something to kind of do when there really wasn't a lot going on, right?
Right.
So I kept up with him. I let him know that I was on standby. I was gonna stay ready, and then little by little from there, we had that one conversation. I started like naturally working on my weight, and the pound started coming off, and then we got an opportunity to get a fight for Bellator that kind of fell through, and that kind of put things in perspective that bigger organizations were kind of taking me serious. I was on a 2-fight win streak going into the Contender Series, and although it didn't go my way, staying ready for that opportunity was a great lesson I learned. So that was one of the things, my takeaways from this year. So just that's all I've been doing, man. Just staying as ready as I can be. Working with the best what we got. A lot of gyms are shutting on and off because of
Yeah.
shutdowns, and I'm still working from home, and I'm really thankful for that. And that's really it, dude. It's
Yeah,
been
dude,
home.
how yeah, right. How did that all how did the gym, obviously like you mentioned the gyms were kind of on and off, so was that like a struggle at all for you to be able to find, a gym that was going to be open and ready to, have you train there or
Yeah, I mean, again, fortunate and grateful. 4-1 boxing. It's where I do my boxing work. I get some stand up striking, but again, primarily boxing. Right, it's on an MMA gym, and I do my strength and conditioning there. So when COVID hit, really all I could focus on, and the only thing I had made available to me at the time was strength and conditioning and working on my boxing. And it works well because I like to box when I'm in MMA. So and I just kind of made the best out of what I had, and got as much out of it as I could. I mean, great. It would have been great to get the win and get in the UFC. It would have been a different story. Probably having a different conversation right
yeah.
now. But yeah, man, just staying ready and taking an advantage of that kind of opportunity. Jose Santos, the guy that runs the gym over there. It's one thing for me to get up. I go to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's one thing for me to get up at 3:15, 3 o'clock in the morning, get out of bed, have my cup of coffee, make it to the gym by 4, put in 2 hours of training and get home. But it's a different thing when you're the trainer and you're not, like
Yeah.
it's a team thing, man. And you know, he's not only been there for me, but he's been there for a few other fighters throughout the pandemics, a few other guys that have gotten fights, and he's been able to help them out. So, shout out to him and what he's doing for us.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and then when you got that call, I mean, what was that like? I mean, it's been a long road for you. So to get that opportunity must have been, I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
Because it's one of those situation I got to look at, and it was an opportunity of a lifetime. It's a situation that for a long time I never thought it was going to actually come my way. It didn't, and it wasn't the result that I really wanted, but I wasn't mad at my performance. I went in there, put my best foot forward, and gave it my all, and woulda, shoulda, coulda, but didn't. You could play Monday morning quarterback, after the
Yeah.
fight and look at some of the things you could have done differently. But overall, I know that it wasn't a factor of effort or of will or anything like that. And as a fighter, you got to sometimes accept that you just weren't the better man that night. And although the fight was going my way as the rounds went on, especially in the third round, I was able to get that solid third round and almost finish him. It's just one of those things you got to live and learn from. And I'm thankful for the opportunity. And I got to learn a little bit about me and know that, I really feel like I do belong at that level. And I feel like a piece of me knows I'll be back. But I also know there's some adjustments that have to be made, and I'm looking forward to this new year to do so. I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and well, I'm kind of interested, you take a really positive perspective out of obviously a result that didn't go your way, like you mentioned. And I think that's really good because a lot of people maybe, in life and in any situation, whether it's work, whatever it is, they might have a situation that, something doesn't go their way and they kind of, they might sit and hold their head and kind of, let that really bother them. But you kind of take a very positive perspective to it. Like you said, you're learning about yourself, making adjustments, and you really believe that you'll be back there and that you belong. So that's really interesting. Is that kind of something that is that kind of been your mentality throughout your whole life?
I wouldn't say my whole life, right? I think you get wiser as the years go on, and it takes certain things that you get exposed to out life that kind of adds to that wisdom. And I've been in the game now 10 years, right? 2021 is going
Right.
to make 10 since I made my pro debut, and I, I've lost before, and I've come back from it, and I know at least a part of my story, loss is a part of my growth. That might not be the same for other players. I don't champion loss, and I don't accept it like it's just, but I also understand it. It's a part of the growth, and a lot of real true champions have overcome loss and come back bigger and better from it. And I know I've always come back better from a loss. So although it's a minor setback for now, there's 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 more to grow. There's more opportunity ahead. Um, and this game is real mental more than it is physical and anything else. And although you got to be physically fit, and although you got to do all the training and do everything on a skill set wise, the mental aspect of it is so deep. And having some of these mental hurdles that I've kind of battled with myself and being able to answer some of these questions, and like being in that apex center and understanding that there's been multiple UFC fighters being there, like that whole, it wasn't like I was there and it was completely foreign. It was almost like I got there and I was like, I felt like Willy Wonka, dude.
Yeah.
I felt like I had the golden ticket.
Yeah.
Um, and I had like kind of envisioned, a lot of that before I got there. Um, and when everything was all said and done, it was just like, damn, this sucked. Like, but I had a good time. I
Right.
made the best. I enjoyed it. I made a good impression. But a piece of me was like, you're gonna be back. You're
Right.
gonna be. So there's another season, the contender next year. Um, I, I think getting back down to bantamweight for me at 135 and making a real strong run and putting a couple good wins together within the next few months. Now that a lot of organizations are finding ways to get events going, um, I'll be back there again for the next season, and
Yeah. I mean,
that's my objective.
yeah, no, definitely. And I kind of wanted to kind of see what your perspective was with you. Where is it almost kind of like a bubble situation when you were there, like staying in the hotel, quarantining, testing, all that kind of stuff?
So, very fortunate again for the circumstance, working from home. I had like very little vacation and personal time left out, right? It was September. I already kind of taken all my vacation time. All I had left over was a couple of days of PTO to call out or, just very minimal time at the end of the year at that point, right? Um, we got there 10 days out from the fight. and I packed up. I work off 3 monitors and a tower, full desktop system, and I really can't work with less. It just would leave to a bad work day. It would be terrible. But long story short, I packed up all my stuff, brought Dati to the hotel. I had one of my coaches go out there with me, and I was there for 10 and a half, almost 11 days, working while I was training, meanwhile getting ready to fight the Contender Series. So as far as the bubble, dude, yeah, dude, we were swab tested every other day. We were temp checked every day. You weren't allowed to leave your room when you were swab test for those 24 hours. So everything you ate got shipped to the place.
Oh,
And
wow.
then throughout the entire trip, we got a bus ride to Whole Foods where we were able to
Okay.
go and our own stuff. And that was like 3 days or 2 days before the weigh-ins. It was
Oh, wow.
so,
So basically, you were just in the hotel the entire time.
the entire time, like in our room the entire time. But it was dope, right? So one of the cool things was, they have a very small like fit, like one of those hotel like fit rooms with a
Right.
bike and a treadmill. So great. Like I was able to go in there. I would hammer out like an hour of cardio. Again, you look to go for 20 minutes, get on the treadmill for 20 minutes, and I would get on the bike for 20 minutes. And that was like my cardio session. But next door to my hotel room, they had a private room that was completely cleaned out. They had mats in there so you could hit pads. They had a private infrared sauna so you can get in the sauna. So that's what we did. I mean, we hit pads, did cardio, and got in the sauna. I mean, once you're within that 10-day bubble of a fight, that's really all you're doing anyways. You
Right.
know, a week or two, a week, 10 days out, like you're kind of cutting down on any full contact. I mean, you might do some like grappling, some positional stuff, situational stuff, but nothing is full bore, nothing, at least for me and for most professional camps, you're not doing anything, within those 10 days. So it worked out really well. And I had the time. And because of the time difference, I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning anyways, because my body was used to it. But
Yeah.
at that time, I was in Vegas and I was getting up at 4 and going to work and leaving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and having a time to work out twice before I went to bed again. It was cool, man. It was a great experience. Got to see some of the UFC stars while I was out there.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll be back. I just know
Yeah.
that though. So
Definitely, definitely. So the camp really wasn't. I mean, aside from being in the bubble, it really wasn't too different from like a normal camp where you're fighting in like CES or something like that.
well, it was right. I'll tell you what was different. Well, I only found out I was getting the fight 20 days from out from the flight. So I knew 10 days before I flew out that I had the fight, and then so as far as regular camp, when I got 8 to 12 weeks to get ready for a fight, depending if it's a title fight, where the situation, very different time. You get a bigger window to prepare. In this case, it was like the call came in, you got accepted. I didn't even have an opponent when I accepted the fight. I got my opponent after I took on the fight. After I took on the opportunity. And what had happened was the week before, Alex Caceres was supposed to fight. I forget somebody, and they didn't make weight, or coronavirus. It was something along these lines, right? It was a lot of stuff was coronavirus based. And the same thing happened for Bill Algeo that fought Ricardo Lamas that same weekend. 245-pound fighters fell out short notice, and my manager reached out, was like, listen, there's a lot of wacky stuff going on. Make sure
Yeah.
you're not doing any crazy, and you're staying in your lane in that sense. Because there's a possibility, a long possibility, that we might get you out to the UFC this weekend. Like they've reached out to me, they've asked me for a few names, what's your weight like, where you're at now, and so on and so forth. So we kind of knew something was bubbling up, and then a few days later, he reached back out. I was like, all right, that opportunity is no longer there, but Sean Shelby's kind of happy with your recent history. He's willing to give you a shot in the Contender Series. What do you think? I'm like, dude, bet, sign me up. Who's the
Yeah.
opponent? He's like, the infamous yet to be determined. I was like, ah. And then Kyle Driscoll's name came up. The kid was a stud, big 45, 145. He fought majority of his fight at his career at 55. Came out of AKA with Khabib and DC and Luke Rockhold and all those guys, and legitimately trains there for the last few years. And yeah, man, shout out to him. He was worthy adversary by all means.
Yeah. So definitely a good experience overall. I know, like you said, you got to kind of meet some of the UFC guys there and, kind of pick their brain a little bit, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because again, you can't leave your room. So
Right.
I got to run into Andre Ewell, one of
Oh,
my older.
nice.
So he was there. I was downstairs, and I actually walked by his brother. His brother was like, "Sweetbread, right, Paiva?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
He's like, "Andre's here right now, man. He's fighting. He's fighting this weekend because I was fighting that Tuesday. He was fighting that Saturday." So I got to go upstairs and say what's up to him. I got to see Angela Hill. I got to see Michelle Watterson was there in the hallway. Jacare was there. I got to meet James Krause. Um, there was a Drew Dober I got to meet and talk to him for the day. It was cool, man. It's definitely a great experience overall. And like I said, man, it was just like to be there and walk around the Apex Center and stuff, and like seeing like some of the celebrities. And was that Laura Secco? She does like interviews and stuff for the
Yeah.
UFC
Yep.
box. So she was there. I got to meet her. It was just overall, it was just dope, man. Good
Yeah.
time.
Definitely felt like you were at home for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. A little. It was like a yeah. It was a different. Definitely, from walking around the casinos at Twin River, where I'm so accustomed to being in a place that was so
right.
foreign. Felt
How
so
weird was
comfortable.
it with no crowd? Because I know at CES, I mean, I've seen your crowds. I mean, they're big. I mean, at Twin River, it's packed all the time. So how weird was it, that day of the fight with, no crowd, really nothing? Because I mean, I'm sure you feed off that, when you're fighting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do. I mean, I had a big following, but I liked it, man. I liked it because, for one, you're able to think, right? You're able to like kind of process your stuff, and you can hear your corners. And obviously, you can hear your opponent's corner, so it goes both ways. But what it definitely allows is for you to kind of fight your fight. I think sometimes you get in situations where you're in a fight and there are certain aspects of the fight that just aren't aesthetically pleasing. And when you're in front of a crowd, everybody wants to see knockouts and they want to see action from the first second the bell dings to the end of the fight. And the reality is it's not always going to happen that way. There's going to be some aspects where it's a grind, and you got to kind of think things through and be patient. And some people, and maybe myself included, right? I won't exclude myself from this, have made the mistake of like, you know, taking a step too far forward, or like being anxious or overzealous, and letting the crowd kind of dictate the pace of the fight because of the action you want to kind of create, right?
Yeah.
Especially if a guy like fighting in front of a lot of my people. Of course, I want to hear people, rooming and roaring, and everybody on the edge of their seat screaming stuff. You want to be an exciting fighter, but you also want to be an intelligent fighter. And sometimes when you're fighting an intelligent fight, it's not aesthetically pleasing. So it was kind of cool to fight at a slower pace, and I'm not saying like a pace in the sense the fight was slowed down, but like being able to kind of hear and absorb everything that was going on. It was really definitely different.
Yeah, for
Eh,
sure. So yeah, I just wanted to get kind of a little bit into your background. Obviously you've been fighting for 10 years now, like you said. What was your start like? How did you get into MMA? Was that always something that you were interested from when you were at a young age, or how did that all come about for you?
yeah, man. So I tell a story all the time. Like ultimately, I got like into like fighting and martial arts because I was like into comic books and I wanted to be a superhero at like the youngest age you can imagine. And
Yeah.
obviously, you realize it's not the reality of how life works. Um, but I initially got into boxing. I got involved boxing through a friend of through a father of a friend, and then that segued into wrestling for a little bit throughout middle school, but mainly throughout high school. And then as I was wrestling for high school, the Ultimate Fighter really became popular, and Matt Hughes was one of those fighters that flourished, and he was a wrestler, converted into MMA, and a guy I kind of like looked up to at that time. And then as I fell in love with the sport of MMA, just from like a wrestling standpoint, I started really enjoying a lot of the Brazilian strikers that are coming out. Like when I first, before I even got involved, before I even fought my first MMA fight, I was watching videos of Jose Aldo leg kicking the crap
Yeah.
out of Raya Faber, and watching Anderson Silva doing spectacular stuff. Even like some of his videos from Pride. And I got like I got intrigued that way. And then when I got linked up with Keith X amount of years ago, and everything kind of segued from there. But just I've always been an enthusiast, man, from the youngest age. I've always thought like fighting and martial arts was like just very manly thing to do, but yet it was also a very respectful and admirable thing. Um, and as I've gotten more invested into it, I've met the greatest gentlemen of my life and out of the sport, and whether it's through coaches and training partners or even past opponents, I've met some really great people in my life due to the sport, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, and you got a lot of great relationships with a lot of the guys that you fight. I know you posted, I think, on Instagram, your last fight against Tim Dooling. You guys went out to lunch together, like right after, like the next day.
Yeah,
So that's kind of cool. You have a lot of great relationships with those guys. So that's pretty interesting. That's definitely cool for sure.
yeah, yeah, man. I mean, you're going in there. You're at least for me, dude. Some guys want the beef. Some guys want to like talk shit, like and
Yeah,
hype things. That's just it's not my nature. It doesn't add like my best performances are gonna come from where I feel no emotion towards my opponent, and all I'm doing is fighting. Like
right.
that's what people see, right? They want to see you fight at your best ability. The added stress and the aggravation stuff really just that it doesn't for me make for a better fight. And luckily enough, I haven't had to have many of those situations throughout my career. But in the very, very few that I've had where there was some bad blood attempts, it ain't going my favor, and it's because I fought out of my zone, out of my mental element.
Right.
So it's one of those things I've taken away, and I've learned to keep things cool, calm, and collective, and let your actions in the cage speak for themselves, because that's what people are gonna remember. There's nothing scarier than a dude who smiles in your face than beats you down.
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
So I was reading a little bit before this, and I heard that you kind of just started as this kind of just started as a hobby for you. You really never envisioned yourself, professionally fighting. Is that right?
Yeah, man. I just thought it was like cool, dude. I thought it would be a cool thing to do, something different, right?
Yeah.
And trying to find yourself as an individual. And then after, some wins and some losses, and mainly losses, I got to a point where I really loved the sport, but I didn't love losing. I was like, this sucks, dude. Like it's embarrassing, right? You're out there, you're basically half naked, right? You're in the little
Yeah.
tiny little skinny shorts and in front of a few thousand people. And if you're fighting on TV and you got that kind of exposure, you're fighting in front of even more. And you can end up on the opposite end of a highlight reel if things really don't go your way, right? And that's pretty embarrassing in itself. But I just got tired of losing it, and it wasn't like I was getting my butt kicked. Like I never felt like I had the dog taken out of me. So it was one of those things I had to kind of answer myself. It was like, what is it going to take? And it took, putting in the serious work and surrounding myself with the right people to find success. But once I put those things together, and I got that taste of success, and I put together a few good wins, and I got a winning record, and, started getting recognition, there's a lot of things that I benefited from the work I put in through the cage that I sought out in my own personal life, right? Like I grew as a man. I thought, I felt like I met my wife really at the turning point of my career when I met her and I put the work in through fighting. Like my relationship with her got better, and like so it kind of goes hand in hand, and that's
Yeah.
why I loved it so much. Is it's I love fighting, not so much what it's done for me inside and around the cage, but what it's brought to me in my life really outside of it. And it's having a reason to get up every day, living a good quality life, doing the right thing, and just trying to make a positive impact in life, man. And it sounds kind of bizarre, right? Because fighting is a very selfish thing. Here, you want to gloat and look like a badass, knocking some
Yeah.
guy out, but it's really about learning how to overcome your own inner demons and how to become a better version of yourself. You do that by conquering these demons and facing adversities and putting yourself out there. And
Right.
while loss is a part of the growth, right? You really gotta kind of break yourself down a bit before you climb yourself back up. It's a bow and arrow effect, if you will. You gotta
Yeah.
take steps back to shoot yourself forward.
And have you seen yourself grow as a fighter over these last 10 years that you've been doing it?
I see this all the time, right? This is I I like cringe when I watch myself like in old fights, right? When I like watch myself in my earlier years, like granted I got some decent wins early on. Like, there's certain things the version of myself today would wipe the floor with the fighter I was 5 years ago, and then the fighter I was 10. It just so there's things that I've noticed, like where things I've watched myself work on in the gym and then seeing the results of it in the cage. And then you can put, yes, when you can visually see it and you're like, oh my God, like like I tell people all the time, when I knocked out Castillo, I hit him with a jab. I threw a jab. I stepped to the left. I stepped to his left, my right, threw a jab, and then buried it too. That simple flutter combination, I've worked on the pads thousands and thousands and thousands of times. It's something I do all the time in sparring and training on the pads and the bags. And then, but it wasn't something I always did up until a very short time leading up to it. So it's like when you make those transitions, you put the work, you do the drills, and then you reap the rewards of it. There's nothing better. You learn that that's the process you got to implement to gain success at things, right? Is
Right.
you got to put the work in. You got, things don't come. If I didn't work that combination 8 billion times, if I had just decided to throw it in a fight, it wasn't going to land. Like it wasn't. And those are the things that, you take on in life. Like you may get lucky one day and scratch ticket and $1 million, but that's not the reality of it, right? You got to get up, you got to get a job, you got to show up, you got to do a good job, you got to respect your bosses. Those principles that you have in training, you got to take those into life and mimic it, and you'll find success from that.
Yeah, and I
That's right.
know I saw earlier on in your career, obviously you had a good start. Then you kind of went into a little bit of a rut, and you were kind of thinking about doing away with fighting altogether. Um, from that point where you thought about just hanging them up, what kind of changed, so that you kept going, and that and really why you're here today?
So I was training. I started cross training this guy, Mike Rash, and Mike Rash was affiliated with Sityo Tong and Mark Delagrati up in Somerville. He was down with Daniel Gracie and that whole jiu-jitsu camp out in Hyannis and out in the Cape, and Daniel Gracie himself would come down from PA and Jersey. But he's kind of like a New England MMA guru, if you will. And he doesn't get enough credit, but he's put together a lot of great fighters throughout the years and fought himself competitively. Um, so when I started training with him, I trained with him for like, I don't know, a few weeks going into a fight that I lost, and it was like my third loss in a row. And I lost it. I lost it in like a very odd fashion where I got wrestled and I just got kind of taken down over and over again. It was like, again, I lost based on adjustments, right? I didn't make the adjustments. Like I had all these great ingredients, but I couldn't put the recipe together. And he was the one that took all the ingredients and found a way to put it together and have it taste good. So I took that loss against this guy, Rob Sullivan. It was actually my second loss in a row after battling back. So I started my career 1-3, then went to 3-3, and then lost another two in a row to 3-5. And when I got to 3-5, that's when I was like, the hell with this. I'm gonna hang up the gloves. And Loco, Mike Rash was like, just you're very talented. You got all these capabilities and abilities. You just put some things together, train with the right people, and work on some things. And one of the big problems then, and something I was still doing up until a few years ago, was I'd only really train hard for training camps. So like outside of a training camp for a fight, I'd be out of the gym for like a few weeks to a month, screwing off, partying, having fun, catching up with family, catching up with work before I get back to the gym. And at that point, it was almost like I was kind of getting ready for another fight again. And then you really weren't growing and working on things and the fundamentals you need. So once I started working with Gresh and I got involved and I put the right people around me and started training seriously, I got serious results. I went on a 4-fight win streak, all first round finishes, um, and put myself on the map from New
Yeah.
England, and then kind of went from there.
Yeah, so that consistency really helped you out. That kind of breeds the success that you've had since, being 3-5. Now you're, 13-8 now. So yeah, that consistency definitely seemed like it helped you out for sure.
Yeah, it's bizarre, man. It's almost like I had a career, like I had that career in the early half, and then I've
Yeah.
had like this other career. It's kind of like a Cinderella story,
Yeah. It's like a tale of two halves almost kind of.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a real turning point. And sometimes I've had this conversation with some of my teammates, some of the younger guys, like I made all these dumb mistakes early on, and I try to advise them at times, like, stay, learn, grow, train hard, work on some things, don't rush, don't focus on getting all these crazy fights, because you don't want to chance a bunch of losses, because ultimately I know I'm better than my record. 13-8 isn't the most visually appealing record on paper. You look at a guy who's like, all right, he's a barely over 500 fighters. The guy's probably been around, fought some decent guys. But there's, if you look deeper into it, you'll see, I've become a completely different fighter. And the guys that I've beaten in the last few years, they belong at the elite level, and I feel I belong there. And um, it's wise to take, the smart approach and do things the right way, and enjoy the moments. And for me, we talked about it. Like, I wasn't thinking about competing and trying to be an actual elite fighter early on, so I didn't care if I lost. But then after a few losses, that taste got sour quick. And now here I am, and I'm trying to make myself in the ranks and make a living out of this. And now I have to kind of battle back for my record. Something,
Yeah.
I've heard it before where it's like, even for the Contender Series, right? When they matched me in Driscoll up, and you see me at 13-7, and you got a guy who's 11-3, it looks kind of funny on paper, right?
Right.
Like, side by side, you can definitely tell I've had, uh, you know, had my fair shares of ups and downs. But I go in and I go neck to neck with a guy who fights out of AKA, and 5-6 fight win streak, and definitely a bigger adversary, body wise. He's going up to 155 now. I'm going back down to 135. So definitely a size discrepancy.
Yeah.
All these things. But it's all part of the growth, all part of the journey. I'm
Yeah.
doing it for the full picture, the full package, not just for
Right.
one.
Yeah, and so obviously this year's been a weird year with COVID and everything like that. So what do you got? Do you have anything coming up in 2021?
So just as of right now, nothing yet. There's no dates or anything. There are a few like personal tasks that I want to get on. I mean, there definitely, I want to fight within the first quarter of the year. There's no doubt about it. So I expect, if it's not with CES, somewhere at some point, I want to get myself to a cage. I do want to work on my jiu-jitsu game. I do want to compete in some tournaments and work towards my purple belt. Um, and really ultimately is get the weight down to where I want it to be. And luckily enough, man, I'm actually a lot lighter than I've been, considering, especially with no activity for a fight, since I fought in September, this far apart, and the holidays and everything else. I'm actually doing a really good job of keeping my weight down. I think it's because, again, that little voices in the back of my head
Yeah.
telling me that there's some stuff up ahead. So
Yeah, and then lastly, I don't want to keep you too long, but just one more quick story here. This nickname Sweetbread, obviously in the Portuguese community, that's huge. How did that come about?
yeah, man, it was given, right. So the best nicknames, not the ones you pick. It's the ones that are given to you. So I had one of my jiu-jitsu coaches years ago, when I was an amateur, that was hard on, like, you need a nickname. You need a funny nickname. It's got to be
Yeah.
something different. You can't have something basic. So I went through like a blitzkrieg of like all kinds of like ridiculous Portuguese based names. I was like Prince of Portugal, Pop
Yeah.
Sick, bread and cheese. It was just everything he could think of that was Portuguese related to came. And then eventually one day, it was like a few months before I was supposed to fight, and I had gotten a haircut. My hair was like real short at the time, and I got a small head, dude. And he was laughing at me. He's like, "Freaking head so small, it looked like a little egg." He's like, "Oh my god." He's like, "What's that bread with the egg in the middle of it?" And I was like, "Oh, the sweetbread." He's like, "Boom, that's your name, dude. That's who you look like. Little loaves of bread with a little bald egg in the middle of it." And we ripped it off, and I was like, "Dude, please, like, of all names." So it was my last amateur fight, and he knew the ring announcer. And before I came out, or as I was getting announced, he gave the ring announcer the name Sweetbread, and they announced me as Dennis Paiva Sweetbread. Excuse me. And that was kind of it. I won that fight. The name stuck. I went pro and ran with it, and then
Yeah.
I was known as Sweetbread from there on out.
Yeah, man. Now it's you. It flows.
Yeah, I, I would have never thought, like, and it all really depends on how you know me. Like, if you came up with me through school and stuff, you'd know me as Dennis in the public, right? If a lot of people in my old company, when I worked for them for almost 10 years, um, it was very Portuguese, Brazilian, Hispanic based, so they all knew me as Dinis. If you're affiliated with my immediate family, they call me Junior. If you know me through the fight game, it's Sweetbread. If you wrestled me in high school, you know me as Paiva. So it's like, depending where you know me from,
Yeah.
I got a multiple different names, and Sweet is another one to add to the mix.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on again, and looking forward to seeing what you're going to be up to in 2021.
I mean, I appreciate it. Thanks, and
All
you have a
right.
happy
Yeah, you too. You too. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Thank you.
All right, man. Peace.
All right. See ya.